Tick tock, time to rock. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to everyone who's watching from all over the world. Yes, indeed, I started 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock, exactly as stated, which means that people like this late are liars. Total. Look at this. Look at this one. Late Zutkaya. Liars. Bunch of liars. You guys here from the Dawa team? Bunch of Dawa guys?
Yeah, a Dawa guy named Zoot. Yeah,
Yep. Well, you don't know. He might like the story, huh?
that's true. I hadn't thought of that. Yikes.
Hey, Robert, how you doing?
Just great, David. Good to see you again. How you been?
Yeah, been a long time, man. Long time.
Yes, indeed.
Yep. Got a little more gray in our beards since the last time.
Looks like it. Yeah, it was been an interesting time.
So, any jihad lately?
No, nary a bit. That's the thing. People sometimes still ask me. Well, aren't you going to start up this weekend jihad? And I say, there isn't any. What are you talking about? What jihad? It's a religion of peace.
Good times, and that's good to know, ladies and gentlemen, that if if we're not reporting it, it doesn't exist.
That's it.
So that's a good principle. That's a good principle. Well, Robert, you're here because I see you have a new book out.
I do. Here it is.
Wait a It's called The Tragedy of Islam. But hey, watch this. Watch this. Ready? Right there. Look at that.
Ooh, nice.
Ooh, I could even just leave that there.
I don't even have to hold it. It just stays there.
It just stays there by magic.
It is
Hey,
amazing.
wait. Put your book up again.
It must be the gin.
Put your book up again. Hang on. Look. Ooh, it's amazing. That's how it's done, ladies and gentlemen. All right, I'll stick that back in the middle.
we could have uh, we could have done a magic trick with that.
Yeah, we
You
could have
know.
done something like that. That would have been funny.
Yeah.
All right, so your new book is The Tragedy of Islam. And I was in, I saw you had a new book coming out, The Tragedy of Islam. And I was like, Robert already has 487 books on Islam. What could he possibly still be writing about Islam? And then I looked at it. Now, the way it looked, guys, by the way, it just came out 2 days ago. Just came out 2 days ago on Amazon. Number one new release in the history of Islam. But it looks like you're pointing out how Islam has a problem making societies where anything works or where anyone wants to live. And that's why it just keeps failing over and over again. And then the way it deals with its constant failure just leads to screwing up things for everyone else and to more failure. That's what it looks like to me.
That's part of the book, David, and that's very true. That Islam, very simply, it doesn't work. It's bad for societies and bad for individuals. And so, this is actually something that I wanted to do for a long time. And I thought that it would be a kind of a new avenue for exploration as opposed to what usually goes on, which is whether this is true or not, or did what are the moral problems with Muhammad's biography, or the historical problems for that matter, and all these different issues that we have all spent time on. I wanted to ask a different question. Is it good for you? Does it actually help people? Is it good for people's lives? And in a larger sense, is it good for human societies? And that's what this book is about. And then the excuses part, failure and excuses, you see, is the subtitle. The excuses is, even though Islam is a total failure for societies and individuals, does not make individuals' lives better, does not make societies better, never has, never will, and I show why in the book. But also, there's no end nowadays of people in Europe and North America who fall all over themselves to make excuses for it, who show how really it's the infidels' fault that Islam has such a terrible record. In it's anybody's fault except the Muslims or Islam itself.
Yeah, it is weird. Whenever I bring up, you know, why does Islam have such a difficult time making a place where people actually want to live instead of, trying to get out of there as quickly as they can and get to some, European nation or to, the United States or Canada or something like that. Because you don't see a lot of people saying, "Oh man, I really can't stand things here in the United States. Let me move to Saudi Arabia." You don't see it going in that direction. It's always them wanting to move here. And if you bring this up as a criticism, they'll say, "No, it's because we're going to convert you all and stuff like that." It's like, come on, you guys are you guys don't like living in the ummah. You don't like living in the Muslim world. You don't. You like going other places. And so doesn't that tell us something? Even the people who believe in Muhammad don't like living in societies where Muhammad's teachings have influenced those societies. That kind of says a lot. But when we bring up, who wants to live in Afghanistan? Who wants to live in some of these places in Pakistan and so on? Who wants to live in these places? The response is, "Oh, because the Crusades." It's like, what's that got to do with anything out there? Or it's because of colonialism, and it's always some cause like 300 years ago or 1,000 years ago that is the reason that things suck so bad in Islam. And it's like, it's weird because, like, okay, there was this thing called World War II. World War II. The world was fighting, and Germany got bombed down to rubble, invaded, and conquered. Japan got their military crushed, and then actual atomic bombs dropped on them. Germany and Japan now have the third and fourth best economies in the world, right? As far as GDP, right? It's the United States, China, and then these tiny little places and so on. So places seem to be capable of rebuilding, and other nations are usually happy to help people, to help countries thrive and so on. The idea is they want multiple countries in the world all doing well and so on. And so, but that's recent. That's the last century. Much of these places got bombed down to rubble, and they're thriving now. So what you're saying to me, even if we granted to you that, oh, it's because of this thing that happened 700 years ago, that's why you suck at making countries so bad. Okay, then even if you say that, then what you're saying is like Islamic culture just completely lacks any resilience, and something that happens just completely destroys the society. Okay, that would be an admission in itself. Islam just it lacks resilience. It can't function once anything bad happens to it at all. Usually caused by ticking people off really, really a lot. So anyway, yeah, wild stuff.
And let's remember, David, Afghanistan was never hit by the Crusaders.
Nothing to do with it. Nothing to do with it.
They weren't even close. And you can say, oh, colonialism, the British were there, or the Soviets, or the Americans even in the last 25 years. But the fact is that they rejected the Americans in favor of Islam. They wanted the Taliban rule that had been there before. They got it back. And it makes them a human rights basket case, an economic basket case, a failed state in every measurable respect. And that's what they've chosen.
And when you pointed out that this book is about why it's just bad and it doesn't work, it fails. It's a failed system. They've been trying it for 14 centuries. It just doesn't work for people or for societies. It reminds me of this. And you pointed out how we're normally focused on, is Islam true, and those kinds of discussions. Is Muhammad a true prophet? Is the Quran really the word of God? Those are normally the issues. And then, as you pointed out, like history of early Islam and things that Muhammad did and so on. We're normally focused on those kinds of things, as opposed to just, hey, why does this always, always, always fail? And this reminded me, I don't remember exactly what year this was. Might have been like 2012 or something like that. But I had a debate at Columbia University. It was with an atheist, and it was on like the moral argument for the existence of God. Anyway, after the debate, I was hanging out with I don't know, 7 or 8 atheists. It was just me and like 7 or 8 atheists, and we went and had dinner, and we're hanging out, and they were asking me, all right, why am I a Christian? And I start giving them arguments. Start giving them arguments. And so why do I believe in God? Why am I Christian? And stuff like that. I start giving them arguments. And after a while, one of them said, look, I'm going to be honest. I don't care if it's true. I just care that it's bad. And that was like surprising. That was like really surprising to me, because it was just like, it's totally contrary to the way I think, right? I'm
Yeah.
interested in what's true. But anyway, this atheist said it, and then I went down the line with the atheist. I said, "Do you agree with that?" And they said, "Yeah." And I went down the line, every last atheist that I was talking to. So these were young college age atheists, and every last one of them agreed with the statement, "I don't care whether it's true. I care that it's bad. It's like it's bad for the world." And that was like, I was just thinking, oh, we're sitting here giving arguments for the truth of Christianity, or arguments for the existence of God, and they're admitting they don't care whether it's true. They're focused on it's bad, because this is in the heyday of the new atheism, where religion's ruining religion poisons everything, and so on.
Yeah.
And they'd absorbed that idea. And so I was thinking, I went to the next Christian conference, and I was talking. I remember it was Paul Copan. He was speaking. It was during the Q&A, and he was giving a presentation on how Christianity impacted the world in terms of like literacy and spreading human rights and things like that. And I sort of raised my hand in the Q&A. I said, and I described that little situation. I go, have we gotten to a point where what you're talking about now, why this is actually good for the world, but people are forgetting about it? That's actually more important. It's a more important discussion than arguing that it's true, because that's not the objection of lots of these young atheists. It's not, oh, you don't have good. They'll say it. They'll say you don't have any good reason to think it. But when you start going, they're hostile for another reason, and they're dismissing everything for something else. There's something else that's really bothering them, and they found out, oh, it's just they think it's like destroying the world somehow. But anyway. Point is, that might actually be a massively underestimated or not emphasized enough issue. It's just bad for the world, and it fails wherever it goes, and it ruins everything it touches.
And here again, it's not an either or situation. We should still continue to talk about whether it's true. We should still continue to talk about whether it actually teaches anything morally good, or if it teaches that doing evil acts is good. But in addition to that, arguing here, we should ask if it works. And look, if this is a condition that the Muslims themselves have given us that we've never taken up. The Azan says, the call to prayer, come to success. They call that out 5 times a day, every day of the year. Come to prayer, come to success. So they are promising you that if you are a pious, believing Muslim, then you will succeed in this world and in the next. And the Quran is very clear. The unbelievers will suffer in this world as well as the next, and the believers will prosper in this world as well as the next. And so they have made it a legitimate line of inquiry. Does this thing actually bring you success? And it doesn't.
It absolutely so. Islam fails either way. Whether you look at it whether you look at its arguments, and they always have to make up complete nonsense in order to provide arguments. It's the perfect preservation of the Quran, total lie. It's the scientific miracle. So they have to make things up to show that it's true. And then on this issue, they have to make up all kinds of things as well. I went to they had it. It was in was it in the Natural History? I forget which museum it was in New York, but they had that big 1,001 inventions, and yeah. And they had Ben Kingsley. Ben Kingsley was in their little movie that they showed, and it was all about how Islam produced all the things that we take for granted now. They invented the airplane. They invented the camera, the cell phone. They invented all this stuff, and like I actually went through and was looking this stuff. It was all complete nonsense. It was like the dumbest stuff anyone can imagine. Islam invented planes so many centuries before the Wright brothers, and they tell this story. And what's funny is they don't tell you; they just state it as fact. But they say that this guy strapped wings to himself and coated it in feathers and took off and then crashed. They don't tell you that it's a poem and it was written centuries after the guy supposedly existed and did all this, and that this was written after it was claimed that a Christian had done it and stuff like that. And then, even then, what, a guy strapped wings to himself and then like jumped off a building and crashed, and that's him, that's Muslims. I mean, you might as well take the story of Icarus or something like that and say the Greeks
Yeah.
invented flight. But it was all things like that. To be fair, you know, there are times when Islam invades and it takes over people's books and stuff like that, where they start making advances in, medical instruments and things like that. I'll give credit where it's due and so on. They have to invent these things. They made progress in making soap and stuff like that to wash all the blood off their hands. But you had things like that, so you can grant that. But it's like, why do you have to make things up constantly? It's just built into it. And it's like, every time you make something up, it's like you're acknowledging we don't have enough real things that we can talk about. And
Yep.
that's just sad. You've got between a fifth and a quarter of the world's population, and you have to make stuff up from 1,000 years ago. You can't even get that stuff right to show how Islam has done such a great job for the world. And it's like, this is sad. This is pathetic, man.
Yep. And a lot of that we have to emphasize that when you go to, where was it, the I forget, but anyway, you see the 1001 Inventions exhibit, which has been all over the world. That's mostly non-Muslims who are putting that on, who are bankrolling it. And that's the excuses part. It's non-Muslims. Like there's this crazy historian, Diana Dark. She's in the book, and she says that European churches get their architecture from Islam, which is actually just the opposite of what's true, because mosques are modeled after Byzantine churches with the dome. And she says she apparently doesn't realize that, or thinks that the influence went in the other direction, when it's quite obvious just in terms of historical chronology as well as the geographical proximity that the mosques are modeled after Byzantine churches. And it's non-Muslims who are always rushing to try to make Islam look good.
It is sad and pathetic. You remember what, probably like 12 to 15 years ago or something like that. NASA was tasked with
Yeah.
can you make Muslims feel better about their contributions to
That's all in the
science? And
book.
oh yeah, it's so pathetic. And I mean, like, just imagine if Christians had to get in a situation where they had to brag about everything that any Christian has ever come up with, and all they came up with was like a list like this big, shorter than Muhammad. You know what I mean? Uh, they just had to keep saying these things over and over. And then just imagine. I mean, first of all, if Christians had to start like bragging about anything that any Christian had ever invented, it would be endless. It would be endless. Or if every Jew had to start bragging about every contribution that Jews ever came up with in science, medicine, or anything like that, or atheists had to start bragging about anything they'd come up with, you'd end up, if any of these groups started doing this, they would have lists way longer and far more accurate than these ones that Muslims come up with.
That's another fallacy of that 1001 Muslim inventions business, is that even if it were true, which it is not, as you outlined with the airplane guy, even if it were true that Muslims invented all these things, that doesn't tell you a single thing about Islam. It may be completely incidental to them, to these inventions, that these guys were Muslims. There is no indication whatsoever that it was Islam that made them think that this is what they've got to do, that they were working from Islamic principles. And yet this nonsense still goes on nowadays. I was just reading this crazy thing. You know, I like jazz music, David, and there's a great jazz saxophonist, Pharoah Sanders, and they just came out with this big box set of a lot of his great records. And the whole thing, I just could not believe he was a Muslim, Pharaoh Sanders, and the music is great. And they quote a guy in the liner notes saying that when he played in this particular way on the saxophone, it was a sign of the oneness of Allah. And I thought there just is no conceivable way you could make that point rationally. That's just wishful thinking. But that's the kind of thing people do all the time to make Islam look good. It's just crazy.
Yeah, and like knowing the pattern. Now, this would be a little difficult for them because they have a problem with music. But the normal pattern I see would be, okay, this Muslim saxophone player. There was a Muslim saxophone player. Okay, so they would take that, and they couldn't just say, "Hey, did you know there was a Muslim saxophone player who was really good, and even Robert Spencer likes him?" They would say, "You know that Muslims invented the saxophone." That's how they do it.
Yeah.
It's like you can't even. So like with Al Jaber, right? Al Jaber, who was an awesome mathematician and made massive advancements in algebra and so on. They even Europeans even named it after him and so on. But Muslims will say, "No, Muslims invented algebra." It's like, oh my goodness, tell that to the Greeks and the Babylonians and the Egyptians and the Indians and the Chinese, all of whom had some version of algebra. But they can't just say, "Hey, this guy made important contributions to algebra." No, he invented it. And so if you can say that about him, you can say that Muslims invented the saxophone because they had a sax player. That's just how it works in Islam.
Yep. This
Welcome.
guy actually, I mean, it was so absurd because what he does on the saxophone actually is called multiphonics, where he plays a couple of 2 or 3 notes at once. And this guy was actually arguing that shows Tawheed, you see, that there's unity in multiplicity. And
You
this,
see, this Muslim sax player has proven the Trinity.
it's just insane. But anyway, this is a book about all that insanity.
All right. Well, I'd like to check out the topics of these chapters. You could tell us a little bit about what these chapters are about, so people get a good idea. Let's take these first batch of super chats here. Let's see. Aussie Abe says, "Finally, a mature Christian on this channel.
Finally.
Finally, I was hoping you'd play Tragedy by the Bee Gees."
I don't know that one.
I don't know that one either. Now, if you want to talk about staying alive, that's a different story.
Ha, 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 ha.
Staying alive. See, you see that perfect harmony we had, guys.
That was tough to do that. That was very hard.
I was watching an interview by what was the other brother? So there's Robin, and then who was the other brother? Morris or something? Anyway, I forget. But he was saying that Barry and Robin's harmony was so perfect that they actually sounded like one person. And it wasn't until like the third brother was jumping in where it sounded like two voices. But if just those together, they would sound like one voice. Their harmony was so perfect.
Is that harmony? When they're exactly the same? Is that really harmony at all?
No, it's not exactly the same. They're singing in harmony, but he's just saying it sounds like one complete voice, which is wild.
Multiphonics.
Yep, invented by a Muslim saxophone player and then popularized by the Bee Gees. Everyone, you see, this is proof the Bee Gees were Muslims like Neil Armstrong. IP came ready to debate. Muhammad Hijab came ready to relocate. Oh yeah, Hijab went live, and our buddy Inspiring Philosophy showed up, and Hijab actually ran. He actually
Really?
ran. Yep, terrified.
Oh,
These are
that's
good
fun.
times. These are good times. I will get the book immediately. That sounds like a thought-provoking concept. That is good.
Thank you. Songs of Relief.
Can we
Fallen
popularize?
Prince. Whatever.
Can we popularize? Make Constantinople great again.
I do not have it ready at hand, but I do have a baseball cap that says "Make Istanbul Constantinople again." Mika.
I want to get a T-shirt that says that and go to Turkey and rock it out in front of the
Oh, that's
out in
great.
front of Hagia Sophia. That would
Yeah.
be funny. Let's see. But what about Dubai? Sharia paradise. Oh, yeah, that's Tucker Carlson. Well, I say, what about Dubai? I mean, Islam produces the best societies. Everything.
I was trying to make a Tucker face.
Yeah, that's actually pretty good. He does always has that stupid look, confused look on his face.
Yes.
How should one respond to the claim that Surah 9:5 and 9:29 are temporary rather than final marching orders? Hadith passages would help. You don't need any hadith passages. This is the last major chapter of the Quran revealed, and it says, "O you who believe." And so the point here is a Muslim can say that because you can say anything, right? You can say, no, that was just temporary. That was just temporary, right? Fight those who do not believe in Allah. It's just temporary. If you're going to say that, though, if you're just going to lay it down without some evidence that this is just temporary, and if you want to throw all, centuries of Muslim commentators under the bus and say, nope, no one understood it, and yeah, these guys just didn't understand as they marched their armies out all the way into India, and as they marched their armies across northern Africa and up into Europe and stuff, they just misunderstood it. They didn't realize it was just for that little situation. We have a problem with the clarity of a law. So a law is like hopelessly confusing. But also, if you're going to just say it there without any evidence and just say, nope, it was just for that time, fine. All of it's just for that time, right? Don't eat pork. Nope, just for that time. You could say that. You could say that about anything at that point.
But if you do want to go the route, I mean, everything David said is true. You can do it from the Quran alone. But if you do want to go the route of invoking the tradition, it is noteworthy that there is an unbroken line of tafsir, commentaries on the Quran, Islamic scholars from Ibn Ishaq in the 8th century all the way on up who say that the later passages cancel out the earlier ones, and that means that the offensive jihad is the final word of the Quran on relationships with non-Muslims. This is unbroken ijma consensus among Islamic scholars throughout history. And so they are just relying on the ignorance of the unbeliever when they say these things are only for the 7th century, because no Islamic authorities teach that.
Mm-hmm. And then, yeah, if you did want to go, I mean, there's even more in the Quran and then in the Hadith where Muhammad says he's been shown the east of the east and the west of the west, and so everything was under the authority of Islam. Okay, how is everything going to be under the authority of Islam if you guys aren't actually taking over? And then you have the claims that you do this until all religion is for Allah and so on. So, yeah, you have quite a few bullets to bite if you're a Muslim and you want to say this is just for that time. Let's see. Professional victims cannot be overcomers. That is true. Didn't work, but they've never tried true Islam. That's what we hear, right?
That's true. There's a lot of similarities between this and the communists saying true communism's never been tried.
Yep. And they
And
both
I
do the
have
same thing.
talked to Muslims. I've talked to Muslims who have said exactly that. And I say Saudi Arabia, Iran, all these are Sharia states, all the rest of them. And they say, no, none of these are real Sharia states. Real Sharia has never been implemented. This is actually something seriously said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so at that point, it's okay. So you have something that's just totally untested. Why would we want to adopt that when it doesn't even work in countries where you have 99.9% Muslim population and you still can't even get it to work? Oh, we still couldn't even get it to work. We still couldn't even get it off the ground. Okay, well, go make it work somewhere where you have 99.9% of the population Muslim. Go make it work somewhere, and then point to it and say, see, look how awesome this is. And we can all gaze upon it and say, wow, that does work. In other words, this is just another admission that it doesn't work. That you can never get off the ground. So yeah, pretty sad system. Without lies, Islam dies. That is true and always has been. Hey, David, love your stuff. Keep up the good work, brother. I did a super chat in the earlier live stream you had with IP. I said, go Ducks, was not referring to duck lips, was referring to Oregon Ducks. Lol, death to Dawa. No, we got you were talking about a team. We just like to bring in Ortho Duck Lips. There's a, Robert, you're probably not up on these things, but there's one of the rising stars of Dawa goes by Orthodox Muslim, but in his picture, there's a little picture on his channel. He does what women did in like selfies from like 10 years ago where they would all put their all do what's called duck lips where they go like this. He's doing that in his picture. So we started calling him Orthoduck Lips. Anyway, now we call him Orthoduck Lips. Without confirmation bias, Islam dies.
Dias.
Muhammad Hijab ran from IP faster than David Wood ran from Mike Winger. Also, Mr. Spencer, is your book available on Google Bookstore and audiobook?
I don't know, actually, tell you the truth. It's the audiobooks always come out a little after the publication, and I'll let you know if there's going to be an audiobook, I'll announce it. But right now, I don't know yet. And as far as Google, I have no idea. There is Amazon, it's on Kindle, it's at Barnes and Noble, and wherever fine books are sold. But
Oh yeah, yeah,
Google, I don't.
yeah. When I looked it up, it's Target. It's all over the place. I don't know about Google Books, but yeah, you'll just have to check that out. But yeah, the book just came out 2 days ago, so any
Yep.
updates would have to be later on. And let's see, did you hear about the Mahdi being arrested in the UK? Yes, I did. I didn't know it was the UK. I saw that he'd been arrested. Not sure you were following that like last year, Robert, when you had this guy who came out and he said he's the new Mahdi. And, well, he's the
Yeah,
Mahdi, and he was everything. He was all the things from all the religions. He was everything all in one. And you look into it,
we
and it's like,
talked about him
oh yeah. And it turns out he's like a
on.
weird. It's a weird sex cult, just like every other cult leader that comes out.
Yeah,
And it was
yeah,
funny
we
because,
talked about him on This Week in Jihad
oh yeah, and this
because
was,
his followers were getting persecuted somewhere.
oh yeah, and but yeah, it was funny because this guy was like a documentary filmmaker, and he spent years studying cults and filming stuff about cults, and then all of a sudden he declares that he's all the things from all the religions, and just basically
Oh,
takes all the cult tactics and rolls them into one.
yep.
Ah,
That's
crazy.
like L. Ron Hubbard, the Scientology guy. And he said he was a novelist, and he said to some other novelist right before he wrote Dianetics, he said, "You know, you really want to get rich, start your own religion."
Smart, smart,
And
smart.
then he did.
Hmm. Islam is a coping religion, requires no thinking, but lots of coping. And Islam is the religion of overpromise and underdeliver. That is a good summary. Matter of fact, I'm screenshotting that. That is correct. All right, Robert. Let me see. I'm going to check out the chapters here. All right. So, chapter one is called "Is Islam the Solution?" And I'm guessing this is something like, because we always hear this from the Dawa guys, they'll point to some problem in the West. Oh, look at this! Look! OnlyFans. It's becoming this huge problem. Islam is the solution, as if Islam's just going to come in and fix all these things. Is that along the lines of what the chapter is about?
Yeah, it's I've got a few people in here saying that Islam is the solution, which of course, as the Dawa has gotten more aggressive and the jihad has stepped up in the West, we see this more and more people saying uh, that America's in terrible shape, America's in deep societal trouble, and I quote a few of those people, like Sheikh Raed Saleh over here saying in 2024, the politicians who are asking about the day after in Gaza have forgotten to ask themselves about the day after in America. And he says, America's grown old. It's on the verge of retirement. It is about to be admitted into a nursing home. And the new young America's future thing is, of course, Islam. He says, the future caliphate, the ways of the prophet will lead to the spreading of Islam. Islam will enter every home on every continent without exception, including every home in America. And so this is a big boast. I go on to quote Syed Qutb back in the 1960s, saying that there is a global struggle between capitalism and communism, and Islam is the solution. Same thing from Maulana Maududi, the Pakistani Islamic scholar and Islamic and politician, and then explain, well, for Islam to be the solution, it would have to solve our problems. Does it? Does it actually even make any attempt to do so? And, you know, you could say, like you mentioned, OnlyFans. So, what would happen if the United States became a Sharia state? Well, all those people would be killed, right? And so, is that a solution? Well, in a certain sense, there's no more OnlyFans, but it's not teaching people virtue. It's just terrorizing them into submission, which is not quite the same thing.
Yeah, and Yeah, my view on this, because that's always an issue. They'll point to any problem in the West and say, "See, this is why you need Islam." And it's no. If there's a problem, we can deal with problems within our system. The moment we say, "Oh, let's bring in Islam to deal with this," okay, we just got a ton of new problems. Ton of new
Yep.
problems. Why are you gonna bring in a ton of new problems to deal with a problem? And
Yep.
yep. And by the way, you could. I mean, Tucker Carlson seems to be heading in this direction. That he's constantly praising. He's constantly praising all these other Muslim cities and stuff like that, and saying how they're so much better than the West. So, yep, sounds like he's heading in that direction. That Islam is the solution. Robert says
Yeah.
no.
And I end up the chapter by quoting the Caliph Umar. I advise you to fulfill Allah's convention made with the dhimmis, as it is the convention of your prophet and the source of the livelihood of your dependents. So what he's saying is always collect the jizya, because this is how you're going to make a living.
Hmm.
This is how you're going to survive in the world. He doesn't say, you understand, go to work, open a store, start a farm, start learning a trade. He doesn't say anything like that. He says always collect the jizya. This is what Islam is built on, ideally in the complete Islamic state, and this is why it's a failure. And then we get to chapter 2, David, and
Well,
this I like.
one second. I just wanted to point out there. That's
Yeah,
Umar. That's Umar. And when it comes to collecting jizya, he learned from the best, because no one was better than Muhammad at collecting jizya. That was a zut joke, Robert.
I kind of got an idea it might be. But anyway, chapter 2 has the best title in the book of all the chapters, and I almost named the whole book this. What do
Right
you
when you said that, I looked at it and I go, that could be the title of the book, man.
Yeah, I probably should have gone with it. It would have gotten more notice. Anyway, too late now. But the tell us the chapter's name, David.
Chapter 2 is the Islamic ethic and the spirit of parasitism. So, parasitic. Islam is
Yes.
parasitic.
Now that is a play on a very famous book that many of you have no doubt heard of. Some of you maybe even read it, called The Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism, which is by Max Weber, who was a German sociologist in the early 20th century. And The Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism is a very fascinating book, because he says that the Northern European Protestant states are economically successful because they're Protestant, and more successful than the Catholic states of Southern Europe in those days, and more successful than non Christian states. And why? Because the Protestants, he said, have the idea that work is something blessed by God, and that
Yep.
God will bless the work of your hands.
Yep. They call
That
it
it
the
is not
Protestant work ethic.
exactly. It is not shameful to work. It is not a chore. It is not a condition of the fall. It is a source of blessings. And he says you find this idea in Catholicism, but only to a lesser extent. And you do not find it elsewhere. And I outline that in this chapter 2, and then explain how Islam does not have a work ethic at all. Islam does not say you work hard and Allah will bless you. There is no idea of that. As a matter of fact, work is vaguely shameful in the Islamic culture. It's something that slaves are supposed to do and the non Muslims are supposed to do. And this is where the jizya comes back in. The non Muslims are supposed to be paying for the Muslims, taking care of the Muslims in the ideal Islamic state where Islamic law is fully implemented. The Muslims don't work and the non Muslims pay for them. And so what you have created is a parasitical culture that lives off the host. And then when the host dies, what happens to the parasitical culture? It dies.
Oh,
And that tracks. That is exactly what we see in Islamic history. And
And that's I don't know if you ever saw The Matrix.
I never did. Should I see The
Okay.
Matrix?
Well, you don't have to, I mean, it's a good movie, but you don't have to see it just to get this point. The idea is that the world we're living in here right now isn't real. It's there was some real world, and then we let machines take over, AI take over, and stuff like that, and um, then the machines decided to completely take over, and then they hooked all human beings up into, like, we had plugs in the back of our heads, and we're just like, it's like a dream world, but it's all connected. It's all connected. It's like a computer generated world. So the world we're in right now is not here. It's the Matrix. We're actually plugged in somewhere in the real world where we're just sitting in some tube. Um, and
You're
anyway,
not plugged in?
nope, nope, nope.
Wow.
Yeah. So anyway, there's this scene where you have the agents. The agents. These are computer programs, right? These are computer programs, but they have complete contempt for actual human beings. And anyway, he was saying that human beings, like real human beings, the reason the machines had to take over and do this stuff is human beings just move into an. He goes, oh, no, I remember. I saw. I haven't seen this in like 20 some years, but he said something along the lines of. Every other organism tends to establish a kind of equilibrium in its environment with other organisms and stuff. He goes, you humans don't. You move into an area and you multiply until every natural resource is consumed, and then you move on to another area and do the same thing. He goes, there is an organism that follows a similar pattern. Do you know what it is? A
Islam.
virus. No, he goes, a virus. He goes,
Hmm.
he goes, human beings are a disease, a plague, and we're the cure. But yet when you were saying it, like,
Yeah.
that's what Islam is, right? It goes in, it takes
Hmm.
over, completely destroys everything that was good, and after it's consumed it all, it has to go out and spread. Like the areas where you have Muslims moving to Western nations, guess what? Islam at some point took over those nations, and it turned it into a place where no one wants to live. And so you just have to get out of there. Where do you go? Somewhere else. And then what happens when you go somewhere else? You start spreading Islam again, which
Yep.
destroyed the place that you just ran from.
Yep. So my principal example here, case study, is the Ottoman Empire, and how the Ottoman Empire, when they conquered Constantinople and destroyed the Roman Empire, they became a first-class world power. And their primary source of income as they moved into Eastern Europe for the next 100 years. They conquered Belgrade in 1521, Rhodes in 1522, Vienna in 1529, although they didn't take it, of course, because we know they besieged it again in 1683. But they took Algiers, they took Tripoli, they're on the march. And at that time, the jizya is the primary source of income in the treasury. And there's a historian, Tom Papadimitriou, who says the collection of the jizya was of such great importance that an accounting bureau for the poll tax was created around 1569 or 70 and was run by dozens of scribes who filled the jizya registers from throughout the empire. The jizya, because it was a flat fee tax paid per non Muslim household, became the largest revenue source in the 16th century. So, when the Muslims are out conquering all of Eastern Europe and making the Ottoman Empire a world power, it's all paid for by the jizya. That's the primary source of income for the Ottoman treasury. But then what happens? What happens with the parasite? The parasite ends up weakening the host. And the Jews and the Christians in the Ottoman Empire did live as dhimmis. They had to face all kinds of discrimination, and they couldn't hold. There were notable exceptions, of course, especially in the Ottoman Empire, but they couldn't hold uh, the best jobs because they couldn't hold authority over Muslims. And so the jizya started to go less and less and less in terms of what was collected. And by 100 years after this, it's not the primary source of income for the empire anymore. And what happens? They lose in 1683 at the gates of Vienna when they're besieging it again. And then you never hear from them after that except, oh, the sick man of Europe. It's this empire in decline. And it's losing territory. It's losing power and influence. Why? They didn't have the jizya to collect. It was all based on what they could take from the non-Muslims.
Welcome to Islam, guys. So I want to say without jizya, Islam dies or something like that. Um,
That's it, man.
yeah, if a bunch of these guys didn't find themselves on an ocean of oil, I don't think we'd even be talking about Islam
That's
at all
right.
right now.
There's not a single Islamic state that is in good shape economically that doesn't have oil. It's only this accident of geology that made it so that some of the Islamic states are prosperous today. And notice also that the sick man of Europe stumbles along for several hundred years being called that, but it wasn't until the mid 19th century, 1852, the jizya is actually officially abolished in the Ottoman Empire because they wanted to ally with the British and French against the Russians. And the British and French made it a condition that they wouldn't fight with the Ottomans or alongside the Ottomans unless they abolished the jizya. So they abolished it, and within another century the empire's gone altogether.
Never to be restored.
That is correct. They had to have it.
All right, so that's the Islamic ethic and the spirit of parasitism. Chapter 3 is failed societies. Are you saying there are failed societies in Islam?
Islamic societies are indeed failed societies for precisely the same reason. And so in this chapter, I go through a very brief history of the Mughal Empire in India and how it went into decline, actually, paradoxically, as the result of an enlightened emperor who abolished collection of the jizya. Of course, it was only because for practical reasons that the jizya was collected in India at all, because the Hindus are not people of the book. But in the seventh century, when the conquest started, they immediately had a council of various authorities and decided to collect the jizya and treat the Hindus like dhimmis because they couldn't kill or convert them all. It was just too vast a territory and too many people. And so they're collecting the jizya. And here again, just as with the Ottomans, the Mughals become this great, powerful empire. But when the collection of the jizya is stopped, then they go into decline. Parasitical society, parasitical culture. And also, it's kind of the shark of human cultures, Islam, because it has to move or die. Just as you said before, what were you saying? Oh, about the Matrix, was it? That humans come and destroy everything and then they move somewhere else and destroy that. It's the same thing. Islam comes in, destroys the society, sucks the unbelievers dry, and then they have to move on, commit jihad, wage jihad against another society, conquer that, collect the jizya from them. And so it's like the shark who has to just keep moving and keep eating more stuff or it dies.
And guys, everyone, that's why you see Islam struggling right now.
Yes.
Basically it had centuries of being able to pull this off, and when other nations became powerful enough to stop it from advancing, it couldn't expand that way, and so starts crumbling. And just fortunately for Islam, they did find themselves on an ocean of oil, but you know, even that won't last, and Islam is crumbling. All
Yeah.
right.
And there's no way that it can get out of this. It's a death spiral, and there's no way. I'm not saying we should sit back and wait for Islam to disappear, but the fact is that if they are not able to restore the caliphate, collect jizya, conquer new lands so that they have people to collect the jizya from, then the Islamic societies will continue to decline. As the world moves on from the oil based economy, their decline becomes even more pronounced. It's only a matter of time.
Yeah, they're in all kinds of trouble right now. All kinds of trouble. And like you still have, I see all these Muslims all the time who think they can restore the caliphate. And it's usually like hypothetical thing. Look at all these Muslims we have and all these Muslim countries we have. If we all just united and we're on the same page under one ruler, think about how strong we would be. It's like, sorry, that ship has sailed. You can't put Humpty Dumpty back together again, right?
Well, that's what they've got to do. They got to do that or die.
Yeah, I vote for that. I vote for that second option. Yeah. So, guys, this is the path Islam is on. We're just helping to speed up the process. Let's take a few super chats right now because we have. I saw an objection a little down, but let's see this. We have Ida here. Hey, Ida. Hello, Robert. Nice to see you again. It's been a while. Oh, hey, David. And,
Hi, Ida.
Yeah, Ida. I've got 99 problems, and they are AI Islam or Al Islam. Both of those make sense.
Yep.
AI Islam or Al Islam. Mr. Spencer looked for your book on Google, and it mentioned your middle name is Bruce. You don't look like a Bruce. I don't know. He kind of looks like a Bruce to me. Robert the
Bruce
Robert Robert the Bruce. Robert the Bruce.
Yeah, I was actually named for the King of Scotland, and uh, uh, this is a name that millions of people have. Robert and Bruce kind of go together. So, what are you going to do?
Yep. Started the Islamic dilemma. Super nerdy forward. Yep. I wrote the forward.
Congratulations on that. Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. You mean most based and epic forward ever. I corrected it for you.
Absolutely.
Let's see. Limerick. The tragedy of Islam, failure, and excuses. They say they want peace, yet they break all their truces. So we all went and looked and found Islam is cooked. Now the Dawa clowns run like gooses.
Oh man, that's much better than any poem I ever wrote. Congratulations.
I don't know. Crusader culture has some competition because you come up with some bangers, but there's actually that's actually related to something. We were me and God Logic and Life and a couple others went to a Dawa booth at Columbus State University. Started talking to them. They got scared real quick and started arguing about why why they refused to debate and stuff like that. But there was a goose walking through and it's going, "Ack, ack, ack, ack." So I started following the goose with the camera going, this is the best dawa we've gotten all day. So.
Ah, I see. Yeah, I'm not up on anything. I don't know what's been happening.
Oh, you'd love it.
I get so much done if I don't pay attention to video world.
No.
Sorry.
You keep doing what you're doing, Robert. You keep cranking out books. That's good. We got the other stuff. We got the other stuff under control. What we don't have is cranking out books under control. So that's
Okay.
that's your territory. Yo, but yeah, we even rolled up in front of the mosque in Dearborn with God Lodge. I had a sign saying, why should we believe Muhammad? Never. I only got one answer, and it was terrible. God Logic Avery, he had a sign up that said "Prove Jesus was Muslim" for $2,200, and didn't go well. Didn't go well, but yep, these are cool times.
Nobody collected, I bet.
Nope. I have to say, Robert, all the stuff we did in Dearborn back in the day,
Yep.
actually helped. Police would show up because instantly they call police when you show up. They see Christians show up to an area. They call police. But the police, they kind of stayed at a distance and were just watching. And I'm totally fine with that. I'm totally fine with police saying, okay, we're going to watch and see if anyone takes a swing and then we'll jump in. But very different from back in the day where they just start arresting you and stuff like that. So
They probably have. Yeah, it's because you won the court case. They know they have to. They can't act like it's a Sharia state.
Robert Spencer and D. Wood, is the term Mohammedan disrespectful?
They say so. Yeah, because they say they don't worship Muhammad, which they do really, and that they therefore you are identifying them with somebody that's it's like calling Christianity Paulism, and they would say this is just somebody we respect, but we do not. He's not the center of our faith. Of course, he is. I mean, Allah is concerned that he doesn't get sad. You know, he's the most important person in the universe according to the Islamic stories. So it's very clear that it's Mohammedanism, and that Allah is Muhammad's sock puppet, and so on. That's all very clear from everything that's written, but they don't like you pointing it out.
Yeah, and so that's a situation where you can call people Mohammedans and be completely accurate, and yeah, they're going to complain about it, but you have good reasons and you can explain those reasons, right? So Islam is a religion. What's Islam? They'll say, it's a religion of submission. What's that mean? Oh, submission to Allah. Yeah. Surah 4, verse 65 says how you submit to Allah. You submit to Allah by mindlessly obeying all of Muhammad's decisions. That's the criterion for being a Muslim. You have to mindlessly obey everything Muhammad comes up with. Okay, well, if the creator of the universe says, I have to follow everything this guy says without question, then why can't I call it the religion of that guy, right? Because that's what God has declared, right? According to you. All right, now
There
we
you
have
go.
this. Now we have this objection, Robert. Tank Imperator says,
Okay.
his argument is incomplete because if you look at where the Industrial Revolution happens, it is where coal was more easily accessible. It's not just Protestant work ethic. Well, I don't think Robert ever said it's just Protestant work ethic. It's a bunch of things. It was having,
No.
especially like when you got to America and stuff, you had rivers that were, you had, and resources, you have all that. I think the point is, if you take people with a crap work ethic who view work as like just this thing that you have to do to make money to survive, but other than that, it's bad. It's something bad you have to do. In other words, if you take two communities, one community views something as good and from God and believes in, takes seriously passages, whatever you do it for the glory of God. If you're working, do it as if you're working for God. You can have one society that takes that very seriously and another society that's just work is some evil that I reluctantly have to do because I'll starve otherwise. They're gonna utilize their natural resources differently. One's gonna end up being more effective. It's just a general principle. If you have one group that really works hard, and another group that's really lazy, then the side that works hard is just gonna end up doing better.
That's exactly it, David, and that really sums up what my point is here. This is actually the reason why I did not name the book The Islamic Ethic and the Spirit of Parasitism, even though I'm totally in love with that title. I didn't really want to make the whole focus on this. And I can tell you that I posted a review of this book at Jihad Watch the other day. And you should remember, folks, people are saying, where's Jihad Watch? Jihad Watch is at jihadwatch.org. It's a written news website. You can go there anytime. I say that because people think, because I'm not able to do these videos now, that therefore there's no Jihad Watch. No, there's no Jihad Watch video. But anyway, point is this. At Jihad Watch the other day, I put up a review of this book, The Tragedy of Islam, and there were all these people in the comments saying, "Oh no, this is not right. The Protestant ethic is not so great, and the Catholic ethic is much better, and this and that." And the Protestants and Catholics started arguing with each other, and that is not the point at all.
Yeah, I know.
The point is just what David said. I referenced The Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism because it's a famous book that people know and have read. I read it in college. I don't know, maybe people don't read it anymore, but I think it's a book that is historically important. And that the point is just what David said, that if you have a belief system that tells you that work is valuable and will be blessed by God, you are more likely to work than if you are told that work is kind of shameful. It's something that slaves and subjugated people do, and that they ought to give you their living. That is the distinction that is at issue here. If you don't have slaves and subjugated people and you don't like working, then you're less likely to do it. less likely to work, and you're going to get poor. And that's what we see in Islamic societies. And so it's a massively different thing from the Christian ethic, Protestant or Catholic or Orthodox, which does consider work as something that you can be blessed by doing. There is no idea of that in Islam, and this is why Islamic societies are parasitical, live off the jizya. If there ain't no jizya, then they don't have anything to live off and they get poor. And this is exactly what we see in the world today, with the exception of the oil states, who just got lucky.
Yeah, so guys, yeah, for anyone who, oh no, he said something about Protestants, guys. If you watch presentations about how Christianity impacted the world, one, Protestant work ethic always comes up, right? That you had a culture that started, like, really valuing work and so on. Robert pointed out that it the same thing existed in Catholicism, but wasn't as emphasized. But those same presentations will talk about Catholic missionaries establishing schools wherever they went. Literacy went through the roof wherever Catholicism would spread, because they would want people to read, and they would want people to be able to read the Bible and so on. That as people are learning to read and so on, then the status of women goes up in the society, and then they talk about the impact on human rights and so on. So guys, this isn't. Robert's not a Protestant, so this isn't Protestants good and everything else. He's just this is something that's relevant to this discussion, and so the comparison is with, you can make the same comparison with, like, communism and socialism, but it's here it's with Islam. Islam, work is not something that you should value or want to do. No, you wage jihad and bring more people under your control. And then those guys do the work. Those guys do the work while you sit back and they bring their stuff and they hand it to you. And again, that will work for a while as long as you can continue conquering. The moment you can't continue conquering, the system breaks down. Let's see, a few more here.
Absolutely.
Isn't the biggest brothel in a Muslim country? They would probably just make OnlyFans to require a mutta marriage. Yeah, they have all kinds of other stuff that's seriously messed up. I don't even remember where this was, but I remember when I was like a teenager, and I wasn't part of the conversation. I was listening to these military guys talking about where it was, somewhere in the Middle East, but they were talking about wherever they were, and they were saying over there. There was a place where if a husband got a prison sentence, he could send his wife to a brothel to pay his sentence for him. And so she has to go live as a prostitute for a while to pay off her husband's sentence. So if the husband didn't want to go to prison, no problem, send your wife to the brothel, and she makes money. She makes money for the government. And again, I was a teenager, so I don't know if that's still going on, because this would have been like early 90s or something like that. But I don't know if it's still going on, and I'm not sure where it was, but I was like, whoa, that's kind of a screwed up system.
Yeah, but not only is it a screwed up system, David, but every aspect of it, if they wanted to be pious Muslims about it, they could do it in a completely legal Islamic way. He could divorce her, and then she contracts 100 temporary marriages over the next couple of years, or 300, whatever, and then comes back and he takes her back because she's already fulfilled the condition, if he divorced her for the third time, that she marries somebody else and consummates the marriage and then is divorced by him. So they can remarry and go on.
And I have to say, Islamic Paradise is like way, way worse than any OnlyFans any OnlyFans channel ever. Is really, 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 really messed up. Let's see. Robert, Spencer just bought your book. We'll read this weekend.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have to say. So, guys, the link to Robert's new book is in the description box. Some of you have your minds have been so poisoned by social media that you're incapable of reading entire books and so on. Even in those situations, I would encourage you, just because when Mo and Dazut here says just bought your book, we'll read this weekend, the first thing I thought was, oh, that's good. I hope he takes some of that and starts sharing it, right? I hope he takes things that stand out in the book and starts sharing it. but that's the idea, guys. If enough people share, like they're each sharing one thing, that does a lot nowadays, right? Lots of people, lots of individuals sharing just one point or one quote or something like that. So, guys, even if you don't plan on reading the entire book, because you're like, I don't have attention spans for lots of books nowadays, pick a chapter. We're kind of discussing the chapter. If there's a chapter you're interested in, you're like, oh, that's something I'm interested in. Read the chapter, find the relevant information, and just start sharing that. Start sharing that stuff on X. Start sharing relevant quotations and so on X. Share that information. As we pointed out, um, lots of people's thinking is this true or not? But other people are, and everyone's some sort of combination, right? But other people are like, they've been told all their lives Islam is actually good and wonderful and it's just being misrepresented. If those people can actually absorb the idea that, nope, this just destroys everything it touches, um, they might be a bit more open to discussions about whether it's true and a bit less hostile when we point out problems with Islam. So yeah, get the information and start sharing it wherever you go.
Yeah, by the way, David, just like with my book, The History of Jihad, that we've discussed on several occasions before and talked about how generally apologetics works on criticizing the Quran, criticizing Muhammad, and criticizing modern day terrorists. And there's 1,400 years of material in there in between. And if you start hitting them on things in there, they don't have any idea because they don't even know that stuff. And so that's the history of jihad. But this is also a book like that where I'm trying to supply a gap. I can tell you that when I put it out on Twitter, on X, there was a whole flood of enraged Muslims coming in and saying, "What do you mean Islamic societies are a failure and it fails individuals?" But none of them, of course, could name a single successful Islamic society. They started talking about the caliphates and all. Nothing modern day, and even the caliphates, of course. I mean, we were just talking about the Ottomans, so that fails too. And you can't look at one Muslim convert and say, "Wow, he really turned his life around when he became a Muslim." For the most part, you have all these terrorists who are converts, as we'll get to later in the book, and it's a total wash, and they're not prepared to deal with this kind of a challenge. They've never been approached in that way before, never been challenged on that front before.
Yeah, and I've mentioned this many times. Robert's book, The History of Jihad. So I read that when it came out, and I'm someone who had been debating jihad topics for years, been in tons of debates with Muslims over the years on jihad. And I pointed out that all I was really familiar with was the time of Muhammad, and then a little afterward, a little bit with the rightly guided caliphs and so on, and then now, like the past few decades, and that's it. And the biggest takeaway from the book was when you read the book, you realize it's completely relentless. It has been relentless for 14 centuries coming after you. Islam is just constantly coming after you. And the only times it stops is when someone makes it stop. Some non Muslims force it to stop. That is the only time it stops. So, one, the complete relentlessness. That was one big takeaway. The other big takeaway was, how do we not know any of this? And again, I've been debating for years. I didn't know probably 85% of what's in the history of jihad. So it's a serious problem. That one of the reasons people can say, "Oh, Islam's just mad at us for disrespecting it. That's it. That's all that." Okay, how do you explain the 13 centuries before that, dummy? Oh, you don't have to because you have no clue because you never heard of it, and the people you're talking to have never heard about it. Somehow we've forgotten it, and that just causes massive problems in the world. So yeah, guys, learn it, and share it. Learn the stuff and share it.
Yeah, David, one other thing about the history of jihad, because it tickles me every time I remember this. That was a guy, I wish I could remember his name, though. I can't remember his name. But he was a Dawa guy, and he was on the scene briefly. He didn't stick around. This is what happened. I remember
Dawa
he
guys
made a
don't last
video.
long, Robert.
Yeah, because they can't sustain it. Abdullah or something. Anyway, his name was, and he uh, he made a video saying, "Look what I got for Christmas." And I thought, "Christmas? What are you talking about?" But anyway, he says, I'm so happy because my parents gave me a copy of the History of Jihad for Christmas, and now I'm going to make a multi-part series refuting the book. And so he did one. He did another show about chapter one, which is about Muhammad and the Quran, and another show about chapter two, which is like the immediate aftermath of Muhammad's death and the rightly guided caliphs. And that was it. 3 shows, one announcing that he's going to do it, and 2 shows about territory that's been covered a lot. And then he stopped. And not long after that, he deleted his channel. And I thought, there you go. You can't answer this history. People are not aware of it, but it shows so many lies that they say. Muslims never understood these verses as applying beyond the 7th century. Well, the history of jihad shows them applying these verses through every century, and understanding them just the way the terrorists of today do. So,
Yeah, and
anyway.
for anyone who doesn't have the history of jihad, I went ahead and added a link in the description to that. So you've got the link there. And I would say something similar about the history of jihad that I just said about the tragedy of Islam. Even if you're looking at it going, I don't read books anymore. At least read the chapter on Muhammad and the rightly guided. I mean, at least read the chapters on Muhammad and the rightly guided caliphs. At least get that material down, or some of the recent stuff. But if you've got time and you're still a reader, my goodness, you read the rest of that. It is pretty crazy stuff. And Robert, I'm pleased to inform you, got my oldest son, never been interested in what we do. Robert, never been interested in what we do until January, when some of these keyboard jihadis on TikTok doxed my wife, aka
Yes.
aka my son's mother, and now he is reading all the history. He's always been interested in history and has a terrifyingly good memory with historical information. But yep, he's reading all the history stuff right now, and I'm going to unleash him on the world. And guys, you messed with the wrong kid's mom. Let me tell you. So
Fantastic.
we got
Well,
Jack.
David, if you all need to relocate, you're welcome to come here with us in Kazakhstan.
Nice. Be there. I'll be there. So
Okay.
Islam requires regular injections of jizya in order to keep its strength. Is the ratio 30-1? Zoot. Yes, Islam needs 30 doses of jizya, and of course they would remove the age restriction for OnlyFans. Yeah, they'd have. Yeah, I made a video about this. You have the passage in the passage in the Quran, which is talking about the houris and talks about them with swelling breasts. You have the Muslim commentators who talk about what the actual term that's used there refers to, and it's not swelling breast, it's budding breast, and it's talking about a stage of development. It's talking about a girl as soon as her breasts start to bud, and so that's what the houris are. They're the budding breast stage, so that's before menses or anything else. Um, and that's their goal, spending eternity deflowering breast bud stage girls. Pretty
Mhm.
creepy. Way worse than OnlyFans, guys. Everyone in your Discord is launching books in 2026. That is true. I fear Islam's only getting stronger here in Europe, not slowly dying. Thoughts? Rather move to the U.S. What do you think about that, Robert?
Well, I do think Islam's only getting stronger in Europe, and that's primarily because of the stupid infidels
That's what I was thinking.
who
It's
are,
not. That's not because Islam is somehow strong. It's because you
yes.
have pathetic leaders who constantly back down from it.
And that's a big part of this book here, The Tragedy of Islam, Failure and Excuses. The excuses, as I said, are all the ways that non-Muslim authorities try to cover for Islam to make people think it's wonderful. And that's being done in a to a tremendous degree on an industrial scale in Europe, where they're trying to justify the mass migration and open borders policies that have brought these huge Muslim populations into the continent.
Here's my gift. I mean gift. D Wood. God bless both. You won't understand that. That's a little side joke there. You know those little GIF files that move and stuff on X? Well, every time I've said GIF file for years, and every time I would say it, someone would say, "No, it's GIF." And so
That's
the
peanut butter.
Yeah. The other day I said GIF and everyone freaked out and said it's GIF and they started making fun of me. It's like, wait, every time I say GIF, you say it's GIF. And every time I say GIF and you guys all, turns out there's a little dispute. The guy who invented it, the one guy, he called it GIF and everyone else has always called it GIF. So it kind of depends on who you go with. But yep, now everyone wants to make fun of me for listening to them at all. Okay, fine. I'll never listen to any of you ever again. Happy? Any thoughts on combination of A, Muslim mayors and refugees in Western nations, and B, Europe cooperating with Syria and Pakistan, Europe self-destroying? Muslim mayors and refugees in Western nations and Europe cooperating with Syria and Pakistan, Europe self-destroying?
Yeah, it's self-destroying. It sure is. I think Europe's self-destroying, David.
They are.
Sounds like it to me.
Have to say,
I don't know why they have this suicidal impulse, but they just seem to.
and I have to say, better them than us.
There you go.
Get your
A
act
lot
together.
of people over here have it plenty.
Yeah, and those of you whose societies are, and it's not everyone, some people are taking a stand over there and stuff, and you hope more people catch on. But if you're in an area that's being overrun, you can, okay, maybe enough people will finally start paying attention to deal with the issue. But if not, then at the very least, you'll be an example for the rest of us to use and say, see, you don't want to be like that, do you? Look what happened to them. Jack Ray says, no one should ask about the Allah sock puppet after Dia visited Moped. People start calling him Moped because he's... Anyway, it's kind of funny. The coal argument is stupid. Islamic countries were sitting on unlimited oil the whole time. Both can be used for energy. And that is correct. That's the point we're making, right? It's the good combination is having a good work ethic combined with having plenty of opportunities to use.
That's it.
I miss Robert's poem time. Everyone does. But too many people started believing that he's a prophet. And so,
yeah, that's it.
Robert,
I had all these devotees out here, and then I had to feed them.
Let's see. Robert, have you written about the psychology of Islamic slave mentality versus Christian family ethic and being adopted, children of Christ, undoing Islamic slave loyalty equals victory, the risen Christ is king?
I haven't. That's an interesting idea. I am planning the next book to be about the persecution of Christians worldwide, and so it may be that will come up in there.
Let's see. Tank Imperator, he's the one who said we were wrong for talking about the Protestant work ethic, and how dare you? He said, if I can, I would say a stronger idea is the economic concept of low and high time preference. Islamic culture creates a very HT preference culture. It's very instant gratification, which is also linked to lower IQs. Oh, keep in mind, all this stuff can play a role, stuff like that. It's just work ethic. Work ethic does play a role.
This is a perfectly valid point, but here again, like David says, it's not an either or. This is a both and yeah, you're right. It's noteworthy that David says Ramadan is the time where they gorge and call it fasting, and there isn't any self-denial in Islam. There isn't any idea of self-control, especially for the men, and it's that does have impact on every other aspect of their society and behavior. No doubt about it.
Mm-hmm. Hey, didn't you guys used to have a show together like 50 years ago? What was the name again? Whatever happened to that show anyways? They know. They're just trolling here. 30 cc's of jizya stat. Gotta have it. This culture is dying. We need 30 cc's of jizya. Revelations 21:8 for those cowardly politicians. Yep. The only solace I find in the Islamic takeover of Europe is that by the time they do, Europe will no longer be an economic power to threaten others. So the idea there is you got people worry, what if Islam takes over modern countries and stuff, and then has modern militaries? And I guess the point here is, no, Islam would like to destroy that place too. And so they wouldn't be much of a threat even if they did take over.
Yeah, except it doesn't happen overnight.
Yep.
If they are able to gain control of Britain or France or Sweden or Germany in the next few years, which is very possible, then it's going to be like the Ottoman Empire in the 16th century. Plenty of jizya to collect, plenty of wealth for the treasury, plenty of money to make bombs to wage jihad against the surrounding non-Muslim states. Could happen, might not, but it can't be discounted as a possibility.
Not on our watch. By the way, I added a link to Jihad Watch in the description. So,
Thank you.
and guys, for everyone who's like, "What happened to Jihad Watch?" That's just where Robert would put together the stuff that's posted on Jihad Watch that week, right? That's what we would cover. Mm-hmm. So, if you still want the updates about everything that's going on in the world with jihad, there's a whole website that does all that for you, where Robert and friends put together everything that's happening in the world. All right, Robert, back to the book. Chapter 4 is Destroying the Beloved.
And this is just actually more about what we've been talking about, that this is a parasitical culture and that the same thing will happen in the West, that they say they're offering a solution. They're all more and more Muslim leaders in the United States saying they're going to take over. And if they ever did, then they would destroy the economy and destroy everything that makes them want to take over to start with. And for all the reasons we've just been discussing.
Mm-hmm. And
so then we get to a new point in chapter 5.
Chapter 5 is Failure Breeds Jihad. So take something over and thrives for a little bit, then fails, and you're saying this breeds jihad.
Because, see, the Quran says that you will succeed in this world as well as the next. Islam Web, that I quote here, it says, so anyone who wants to be happy in this worldly life and the hereafter should stick firmly to the Quran and Sunnah and abide by what is in them, etc., etc., etc. And so anybody
works
who
perfectly in Afghanistan, Robert. Come on. Sorry about that.
Yeah, there you go. Anybody who embodies the attributes mentioned in these verses will be successful in this worldly life and the hereafter. He will live honorably and die honorably. So you're successful if you are a Muslim. That is the promise of the Quran and Islamic tradition. And so what happens if you fail? What happens if you fail? You must not have been a good enough Muslim. Everybody's a sinner. Nobody's a perfect Muslim any more than anybody's a perfect Christian. And so if you do not succeed when Allah promises success to the pious, you must not have been pious enough. So what is the greatest deed according to Muhammad?
Jihad.
So if you are a very religious Muslim and you do everything, you pray all the time, you hang out in the mosque, you sleep there at night, everything, and then you still are poor and you still fail in life, what's next? What can you do?
Jihad. You guys catch that? So the greatest thing you can do in Islam, according to Muhammad, wage jihad, fighting in the way of Allah. So if you're sitting around, you memorize the Quran, you do everything right. You say your daily prayers. You've never missed a daily prayer. You fast during Ramadan, just shoveling food in your face like a total boss a couple times a day, but then not sleep, then sleeping throughout the day and stuff and not eating during the day. You just sleep instead. You're doing everything exactly right. And you're wondering, why does my life suck so bad? Well, you haven't done the greatest thing, the main thing that Allah blesses, and that's jihad.
And so Allah's pouting. He's not going to give you any blessings until you come across with the supreme righteous act, which is jihad.
Mm-hmm. And whenever you have, some group like ISIS or something steps up and says, "Hey, we're the caliphate." You had all these guys who were just waiting, right? We're just waiting. You have some people who will go out and do it themselves, right? They'll just start planning a terrorist attack and go attack a concert or something like that. But then you'll have the people, no, they actually want to be part of like an army doing it, not just going out as individuals. And so you wait, and then leads to lots of problems. Earlier, we were pointing out how Islam makes excuses for constant failure, and that they seem to not have a lot of resilience if they'll blame things that happened 1,000 years ago. But the next chapter is failure breeds Jew hatred, and that's the most common answer I hear today. It's why isn't things working? Because the Jews. Why aren't things working? Because the Jews. It's wow. You've got these. You got a few million people, and guess what? Most Jews aren't doing anything. So you think it's like a small handful of Jews, right? You think a small handful of Jews are just crushing the ummah. That's wild stuff. But what's failure breeds Jew hatred about?
Well, chapter 5, verse 82 of the Quran, of course, says that the strongest in enmity toward the believers are the Jews. And there are all kinds of other verses about how the Jews scheme against Allah and the Jews scheme against the Muslims. And so if you are doing everything right and something goes wrong, it must be the worst enemies of the Muslims who are putting some blockage in your way. I still laugh sometimes, David. It's been 10 years since Islamicized me, or almost. And I'll never forget. It's in one of the episodes. If any of you have not seen Islamicize Me, you really should watch this. And just remember that when David said this, I was sitting off camera. I was not in the shot. And I almost started laughing out loud and ruining the shot because there's some problem. You'll probably remember this specifically when I say it, but something goes wrong for all you converts to Islam, and you say the Jews have done this,
Oh yeah, yeah,
and the Jews have not been involved in this at all. There
yeah.
have been no Jews around, and you just drag it in with no warning.
Yeah, that happened
And
over and over again. I think the first time I
yes,
bring it up, it was we were following what Muhammad said about nothing can make water impure, and it's like you have hadiths, even if dead animals are floating in it, it's still perfectly safe because it's nothing can make water impure. Anyway, we get a bunch of water from dead animals. We got these. I ordered some like actual like real dead animals and stuff like that, and stuck them in the water, and then
where do you order dead animals?
you get it from the people who, what's it called when you like stuff the animals and stuff, like a deer's head.
Oh, taxidermy
Yeah,
places.
taxidermy. Yeah, you order from that. Yeah, so I ordered like a squirrel and like a raccoon or something like that. Anyway, we had them in the water, and then Vocab and John pretend to be drinking this filthy water and stuff. Anyway, they get sick. And then I'm the only one who didn't drink it, but I'm in the kitchen when they're throwing up, and I go, there's only one explanation. Some Jews must have poisoned our dead animal water. I think that's the first, but yeah, we kept bringing it up over time that the Jews are behind everything. But that's what you get. That's what you get from Islam. And so, guys, just think about what's going on here, right? Because this is like the big picture psychology-wise. As Robert's pointing out, if you're actually obeying Allah, you're supposed to be blessed in this world and the next. Things are supposed to be going swimmingly for you. You're supposed to be taking over the world and controlling everyone else. Look around. That's not happening, which means it either means the whole system is fake and it's not from God, and this is just complete nonsense, but you don't want to accept that if you're a Muslim. So you need another explanation. What's on the table? Well, one, he's not blessing you because you haven't actually been faithful, because you're not waging jihad. So if you go in that direction, then the solution is to go out and wage jihad, right? Or you're not successful because powerful forces are at work scheming against you behind the scenes, and they're thwarting the blessing of Allah. You got to be exceptionally evil for that. And so blame the Jews.
And this is real. I've got in the book here on page 68, David, if you want to go to it. It's the killing of Ismail Haniyeh, the leader of Hamas, who was killed in a highly secure safe house in Tehran, where visiting heads of state would stay. One of the most secure places, if not the most secure place in the country. And the Mossad, the Jews, figured out a way to put a bomb in his room, and he was killed.
Jews, look at that. They're such great schemers.
And so this Islamic preacher, he says, the one who you mocked the prophet, he was poisoned by the Jews. May Allah curse them. The same people who killed this brother, Ismail Haniyeh, etc., etc. They tried to kill the prophet before, so it is not new about them. And so this lives in total contradiction in their heads, along with the idea that if you are a Muslim, then you will be blessed in this world, that you will be successful in this world, but also maybe the Jews will get you. And because they got Muhammad.
Mm-hmm. So,
So,
guys, the hierarchy that you see here. Okay, so you've got Muslims, right? You got Muslims here, and then you've got Allah. You've got Allah over the Muslims. So you've got Muslims. You've got Allah, and Allah promises He's going to bless you, but the Jews are even more powerful than Allah, apparently, and so you have to figure out. You have to come up with a way to make them not more powerful than Allah, because He's looking all kinds of weak right now.
yep. And so you have failure breeds jihad
Mm-hmm.
because they figure, well, I must not be righteous enough. I'll be more righteous. And the most righteous thing is to go jihad. And failure breeds hatred of Jews because if I'm still not succeeding, it must be the Jews' fault.
Mm-hmm. And
Okay.
then after that, you have failure breeds, chapter 7 is failure breeds suspicion of outsiders.
And that is kind of an extension of the thing about the Jews, but it's more. It's about everybody. And I quote Colin Powell. You remember Colin Powell was Secretary of State back after 9/11 during the George W. Bush administration. And in 2004, there was a big tsunami in South Asia, and 167,000 people were killed in Indonesia. And so Colin Powell went to Indonesia, and he went to Banda Aceh, which is this very strict Sharia area of Indonesia. And he said, let me find it here. He says it somewhere. I won't spend a whole lot of time. Oh, here we go. He said, I think it will show to the Muslim world the nature of our society. We've done a lot for the Muslim world. I mean, we rescued the Muslim people from the tyranny of the Taliban and Al Qaeda in Afghanistan. Whoops. We rescued them from the tyranny of Saddam Hussein. We rescued Muslims in Kosovo some years ago. So, see, he thinks, or he thought, that if we go over there and help them after their tsunami, like we're doing all this other stuff, then they'll start to like us. And there's a big problem with that.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the Quran. The Quran says in chapter 2, verse 120, the Jews will not be pleased with you, neither will the Christians, until you follow their religion. Say, indeed, the guidance of Allah is guidance. And so there was a South African Mufti, Abraham Desai, and he said, in simple, the kuffar can never be trusted for any possible good they do. They have their own interest at heart. So here's Colin Powell thinking, oh, we'll be nice to them and they'll love us. And they're saying they're just trying to get you away from Islam. And so when they're nice to you, you got to hate them all the more.
That is correct, and it's one of the biggest problems in the history of Western civilization is that they think other people think like us, and they think, well, if someone really helped us, well, we would like them more, and then they are confused when it doesn't work out, right? Like, oh, we'll go out and do this, and we'll help you, and we'll agree with you, and we'll praise your religion, and we'll praise your fake prophet, and we'll praise your stupid book, and then your hearts will melt, and you'll stop wanting to take over the world. No, taking over the world is part of the religion, and if you are too stupid to understand that, then they'll view you as either you're like the Jews, you're scheming, or you're a useful idiot. But under no circumstances are their hearts going to melt, and then they're really going to warm up to you. And matter of fact, I mean, Obama tried that. I mean, of course you had George W. and stuff like that, but Obama's really, I mean, when he came on the stage, I remember, because this was just like the most common thing you heard from the left. It was Muslims just feel disrespected by the world, and that's what's causing them to want to attack. Nothing to do with their religion. They just feel insulted and disrespected and bullied by the rest of the world. That's what's causing them to lash out. And if we just showed that we love them and we respect their fake prophet and all this stuff, their hearts would melt and they'd come forward, and it'd all be hugs after that. And Obama went over there and he gave his Cairo speech, and I will say, if his theory was correct, that is the absolute hands down best possible speech you could give to show that we really want to get a fresh start and we're going to respect you and be nice to you and so on. And so this is going to be the new path forward. And so he did that. We opened our arms for the new embrace and we got ISIS.
Mhm.
They smelled weakness.
That's all it's about. Strength and weakness. That's how they see the world. And so they're just not going to respond to kind gestures with kind gestures. But Western leaders just seem to be incapable of understanding this.
But I have to say, after Obama did that, and they still hated us, and then you got even more terror and stuff like that. I did start seeing that less and less. I did start seeing if you just respected them, then they'd love you. It's still around. I still hear it occasionally, but not nearly as much um, as much as I did back then. And that's one of the sad realities. You have politicians who have stupid ideas that they got in their Ivy League universities, and then they go out and implement them, and tons of people die. Not them. They're not the ones who die. It's other people who die because of their stupid ideas, because they don't know history or reality.
Yep. It's yeah. I actually forgot the point I was going to make, but anyway, there's plenty of other points. But
We're getting on in the years, Robert. Sometimes I forget my point mid-sentence, actual mid-sentence. I
yikes.
start a sentence and I forget where I'm going with the sentence.
And you're like what, 30 years younger than I am.
I don't know. I'm 50. You're not 80.
It's a funny thing. I don't know how it happened, but Facebook suddenly decided I had a different birthday. And so every year, I think it's in April, I start getting, because I just got it a few weeks ago, I start getting all these birthday greetings.
No, nice.
And I was really kind of confused because my actual birthday is not in April. And I went over to Facebook and I saw that it said, April 4th, 1950 is my birthday listed. And I thought, do people think I just turned 76?
Happy 76th birthday, Robert. Gosh, Robert, you're looking awesome for 76, man.
In terrific shape. Yep.
Let's see. So we had failure breeds suspicion of outsiders. And then chapter 8, can't tell what this is about from the title, but it says using Islam to make a point.
Yeah, this is another section. This is the getting into the beginning of the excuses. And that is with Westerners praising Islam and talking about how wonderful it is. And so those of you who were annoyed because I was citing the Protestant ethic in the spirit of capitalism and praising the Protestant ethic can now be annoyed with me for criticizing Martin Luther, because Martin Luther, when he was writing polemics against the Roman Catholics in Europe, he compared them unfavorably, compared the Catholics unfavorably to the Muslims. And he says, our religious are mere shadows when compared to them, that is the Muslims, and our people clearly profane when compared to them. Not even true Christians, nor Christ himself, nor the apostles or prophets ever exhibited so great a display. This is the reason why so many people so easily depart from faith in Christ for Mohammedanism and adhere to it so tenaciously. And so I quote this because this was the beginning of a constant insanity in the Western world of Christians and other non-Muslims, for that matter, using Islam, praising Islam for their own reasons and their own purposes. Mm-hmm. But then their praise of Islam becomes weapons that the Dawa people use to convert Westerners. Yep. And of course, we see that all over the place nowadays.
Yeah, it was, who was it? Andrew Dixon White and William Draper. Those were the guys who, they sort of pioneered the idea that, that's like science is anti-religion, right? So they were the ones, and like just terrible, 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 idiotic nonsense. Like, um, historians of science look at these books at like just how deceptive they were. They would take like a quote from Augustine and say, "You see, this is destroying science," and you read the passage and it's saying the exact opposite of what these guys are saying. That's how deceptive they were. But people weren't reading all this stuff, so they just took this at face value, and this led increasingly in the 20th century, all the way up until you get to people like Richard Dawkins and so on. That religion's like just religion is the eternal enemy of science. So this is called the conflict hypothesis, or the warfare thesis, that science and religion are constantly at war, whereas every actual historian of science adheres to what's called the complexity model. It's the relationship is complicated. Sometimes the church is what's actually like funding the scientific research and stuff. And other times they'll have a disagreement, and they'll argue about it and stuff like that. Or you can have times of persecution and so on for certain ideas. But yet Draper is one of those guys. It turns out Draper hated Catholics, right? He hated Catholics, but he viewed Muslims as like the Protestants of Arabia. So you had the Protestants, and he didn't want more. And all his goal was just stopping Catholic immigrants from coming to the U.S. He didn't want Catholic immigrants coming. So he makes it the Catholic Church is at war with science and stuff. So science is really taken off. You don't want these people to destroy it as they always have. And so he would basically praise anything that was not Catholic. And so he's praising Protestants, but he's praising Islam as like the Protestants of Arabia and so on. Like, but Muslims will use quotes from that guy. Look, he said something great about Muslims. He said something great about Islam. He said something. They have no idea why these people are saying that. But yeah, it is absolutely pathetic. You'll have people who don't know anything about the issue, who have an agenda, who say something nice about Islam to basically spit in the face of someone else, and then a century or a century and a half later, Muslims will take that quote and say, "You see, even this person acknowledged how great and wonderful Islam is."
Yeah. So that's what Luther's doing. He's using Islam as a stick to beat the Roman Catholics, and he ends up going too far and giving the Islamic apologists a weapon. He even says that the Catholics tried to hide from the Europeans how wonderful Islam is. He says, "Now I understand the reason why the Turkish religion is so concealed by the papists, why only base things are told of them." See, this is why he's saying, why do we only hear bad things about Islam? Because of the papists. It is because they sense what in fact is true, that if it should come to the point of arguing about religion, the whole papistry with all its trappings would fall, nor would they be able to defend their own faith and at the same time refute the faith of Muhammad. And so he's just using Islam as a stick to beat the Catholic Church. And it is something we see all through history. The next one I've got is Voltaire, who I believe was a deist.
Yep.
Who rejected revealed religion, but he says he read an early George Sale's 18th century, was it, or 17th century translation of the Quran, 18th century translation of the Quran, and he says he came to appreciate Islam as benign and tolerant, a wise, severe, chaste yet, and humane religion, less impure and more reasonable than Christianity and Judaism. That's Voltaire.
So, that's the pattern you see back then. It would be someone, and there's someone he's criticizing or not liking, and yet then they use Islam to throw in their faces. And then now it becomes, you still see these quotes from Voltaire and all these other guys that Muslims use for dawah. My goodness, the world is dumb.
Yep. Edward Gibbon is another one, the famous English historian who praises Islam because he was an anti-clericalist. And so he didn't like that the Anglican Church in England and the Catholic Church on the continent had priests and bishops. And so he's talking about how great Islam is. And Napoleon. And I talk about this from a different angle in the history of jihad. But when he invaded Egypt in 1798, he tried to gain favor among the local people. Some people think he converted to Islam altogether, but he certainly talked like it. He says, "Glory to Allah! There is no God but God. Muhammad is his prophet, and I am one of his friends. The Quran delights my mind. I love the prophet."
You
And he, of
see,
course,
this
just
is the proof. Even Napoleon.
he just wanted Egypt as part of his empire. As a matter of fact, he denied having converted to Islam, although there are persistent rumors that he did. He said, "Fighting is a soldier's religion. I never changed that. The rest of it is the affair of women and priests. As for me, I always adopt the religion of the country I'm in at a particular time." So that's all he
Smart.
was doing.
Smart. Um, let's see. Next up, we have tolerant Islam as a social and geopolitical weapon.
And this is just more of the same. That in the 19th century, I mentioned earlier that the Ottomans allied with the British and French, and this is when they abolished the jizya. But this was also the time when the British and French governments actually, because they wanted to justify going to war, allied with the Ottoman Empire against Russia, which was Christian as they were. They started to talk about how Islam was tolerant and wonderful. And the Islam is a religion of peace nonsense really started in the mid 19th century to justify the Crimean War and to give them an excuse because the people in those days, people knew. And so the British and French populations were enraged that the leaders of Britain and France would actually ally with the Ottoman Empire. And so they ran this publicity campaign to say, "Oh, really, Islam's wonderful. It's peace. And so it's not a bad thing to ally with the Ottomans." The people knew better. They remembered it was within living memory. You know, their grandparents, their great grandparents had fought in wars against the jihadis. But now the geopolitical situation was changing.
I have to say, I think that's the reason some Eastern European countries like Poland and so on aren't as friendly towards Islam as they still remember. You know, even though
Mm-hmm.
it's more distant now than it was back then, but they still remember the people who stood up against Islam. They still remember like the constant, endless invasions by the Ottomans and stuff, and so they don't. They're not as gullible as like Great Britain and so on.
Yeah. Well, you know, Jan Sobieski is a hero still in Poland, modern day Poland. And so people more generally have an idea of what he's a hero for than anybody remembers over in England or France. And so I've got a few others examples of that in this book. One of the most interesting things is that one of the greatest scholars of Hadith, Ignaz Goldziher, a Jewish scholar, he actually is a tremendous resource if you want to study the Hadith in depth and understand the. That's actually not true. I'm sorry. A comment caught my eye, and a lot of people say nasty stuff in the comments, and it's not worth noting. But somebody
What?
says
Want me to
this is
destroy someone? No, sorry.
no, this is just more of the same. Robert Spencer about his own book. No, that's not. This
Who said
book
that?
is completely different.
Yeah, I'm saying no. I'm
Songs
saying
of
no.
Relief. Absolutely. This book is stuff that has never been said before, not just by me, but by anyone. And this is a whole different line of inquiry. People might say that
No, that's not
it's
that's not
all
so-
about Islam, but
yeah,
that doesn't make it the same as the others.
yeah, no, that's not Songs of Relief saying this is more of the same. It's quoting you saying apparently you said this is just more of the same. Robert
Yeah, but
Spencer
I'm
about
not
his own book.
talking about the
Yeah,
book.
yeah, he's not talking about
I'm not
his book there,
talking.
guys. Yeah, because no, this is new stuff, guys.
I don't know in what connection I said that. I don't have everything I said
Yeah, you're talking
memorized.
about something
But
specific.
yes, but I get that a lot. You know, people say, "How is this book different from the other book?" And I'm always happy to answer the question. But you should just know in general, I've written 32 books, and they're all different. that publishers don't like it when you give them the same thing that's already out. Every one of them is different from the others. But anyway, Goldzier was entranced with Islam, and it's interesting because he's a very realistic and sober critic of the Hadith. And I know, David, I know that we disagree on this, but a lot of the skepticism about the historicity of the Hadith, it doesn't come from modern day people. It comes from Goldzier, who died in, I believe it was 1921. And he speaks about them in great depth. But he also, oddly enough, he speaks about having his greatest religious experience in a mosque in Egypt, and that he felt never closer to God than there. And he never converted to Islam, but he sort of foreshadowed this idea of all of these Abrahamic religions being um, pathways to God on their own, all that sort of nonsense. But nevertheless, a great scholar in his work. This his personal life and his experience in Egypt is another thing.
Uh, and after that, we get to some chapters which are what I was bringing up earlier with how Islam has done so many great things and actually does work. So, chapter 10 is the Al Andalus of our dreams. I'm guessing that's about the Andalusian paradise where
Oh yeah.
Muslims, Christians, and Jews all live together in a state of perfect harmony with Muslims in charge. And when Muslims are in charge, everything works out well.
Yep. And this is just flat ahistorical nonsense. People who say Andalus, Al Andalus, was some paradise of multiculturalism, are working from a fantasy, which is why isn't that the chapter title there? The Al Andalus of our dreams. It's just a dream. The real Al Andalus, from contemporary records, was a brutal place where the Jews and Christians were denied basic rights, lived as dhimmis. It was a big slave area, a slave market for the whole Islamic world, and that's because there were a lot of non-Muslims around who could be enslaved. It was, and I've got all the goods right in here, and so it was non-Muslims, particularly a historian, the late Maria Rosa Menokal, who wrote *The Ornament of the World*, who popularized this idea. Not long after 9/11, if I recall correctly, who were saying that this is some Islamic golden age. And the whole idea is not to talk about Al Andalus at all. You understand? They're not really wanting to tell you anything about Al Andalus. What they want to do is make you think, oh, all these Muslims are coming into our countries now, and that's just great. It'll be like Al Andalus. Well, it will be like Al Andalus, but Al Andalus is not like what you think. It was a much more uncomfortable place for non Muslims than that.
And this is the one of the sad things about people, one, not remembering history, and you can't blame people for not remembering things that far back and so on, but that they won't learn it. The problem with people not learning their history, even when history is being completely misrepresented, is if you don't learn it and learn how to respond to it and learn what the reality is, then that allows the Muslim Dawa clown and the various spokesmen and so on to say whatever they want because they know they're
Yep.
operating in an atmosphere of ignorance and allows them to say whatever they want. And this was the golden age, guys. This was the golden age. Wouldn't it be great to go back to the golden age? You like golden ages, don't you? I like golden ages. Let's go back to the golden age where Muslims are in charge. See, it'll be better.
Oh, yeah. Well, the historical ignorance is really a massive problem in this, because in the Islamic world they don't actually have that historical ignorance, and there's a much larger general understanding of history, of course, from the Islamic perspective, and then they can just lie like dogs to the Americans and Europeans, and the Americans and Europeans don't know any better, and then there's so many Americans and Europeans who join in the lies, and that's the next chapter.
Oh nope, that's a little farther down. So we've got we already talked a little bit about they invented science. That's chapter 11.
Yeah,
So, and then
this is a
and then
particular thing. I take on this TikToker. I know it's kind of crazy. I probably should have made a video, but anyway, this TikTok guy made a video. Which religion brought more to Western civilization, Christianity and Islam, or Islam? He's an American non-Muslim, and it's just a symptom of the problem we're dealing with, that he thinks all these falsehoods. And so I take him on in this. And then we have, yes, chapter 12.
The fictional palace of Islamic achievements.
And there we go. That's, you referred to that before. I think that's the 1001 Inventions
Mm-hmm.
chapter. They are in here somewhere. Yeah. 1001 Inventions is on page 137. And you understand, when they see, uh, when they make these things up, rather, and when they say stuff like they invented airplanes because some guy strapped wings on his back and jumped off a cliff, then it just leads to another question. And the other question is, why didn't you do anything with it? If he really invented flight, how come it was left to a couple of guys in North Carolina in 1903 to actually get a flying machine going? Why didn't you guys do it? If they if they really I've seen, there's another one that's in here somewhere. Copernicus, isn't he the guy who discovered that the Earth goes around the sun and not the other way around? And so I've seen people say, "Oh, but it was actually all so and so 100 years before Copernicus." Okay, but the Europeans took that and ran with it, and all sorts of discoveries of modern science and astronomy, not astrology, come from that. So why didn't you guys do anything with it? It was left to a European to do something with it, a non-Muslim. Why? If you invented everything, why was it always left to the non-Muslims to make something of it?
Yeah, everyone, here's the actual reality of how this would work. Islam is based on going out and conquering and taking over other areas and taking over other people's stuff. As they would go out, as Muslim armies would go out, they would take over an area, and then they would suddenly have access to those people's books and so on. And this kind of took off in two areas, in science and in philosophy. So what would happen is you'd have all these books of the kuffar. Now all of a sudden you have access to the books of the kuffar. Let's say philosophers who, among the Muslims now who are interested in studying philosophy would have to go get permission of the caliph, and they would go before the caliph and say, can we examine these books to find out what use they can be for Islam? And they would get permission. Well, then you'd have a brief period of actual advancements. You'd have to start having Muslim philosophers and so on. You start having Muslims work on science. But it wouldn't take long before the religious leaders to realize, these guys are coming up with some ideas and some theories and views and stuff that are conflicting with the Quran and so on. And then they'd have a problem with it, and Islam would suffocate it. So Robert's pointing out, like, why doesn't any of this philosophy, science, medical research, mathematics, why doesn't it last in Islam? You have brief periods where it takes off for a while, and then Islam suffocates it. How is that supposed to impress us about Islam? Islam isn't what produced it. Islam is what suffocated it and kept it from taking off. So what does this have to do with Islam? We can't figure it out.
That's another point, actually, that the great philosophers, people say, I see it all the time. Oh, you owe your whole thought, your whole philosophical foundations of the Western world to
Averroes and Avicenna and Ghazali.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Okay, great. Even if you grant that, although it's wildly overstated, even if you grant that, then you got a problem. Because the last guy you mentioned, Al-Ghazali, said the other guys were heretics. Because what they were saying was there was a dual truth, that there was the truth of the Quran and the truth of philosophy. And Al-Ghazali said, quite rightly, that makes no sense. There's only one truth. And you guys are heretics and should be killed. It's on the last page of The Incoherence of the Philosophers. The philosophers are heretics and should be killed. How come you don't have great Islamic philosophers after Averroes and Avicenna and all those guys? Because of Al Ghazali saying they should all be killed. And this happened in all manner of endeavors.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, next up we have adopting Islamic grievances.
Now, see,
Ooh,
this is more
they've got some
stupid
grievances.
infidel. That if you believe that these people are noble, the noble victims of colonialism and so on, and that they had this superior civilization and they have this superior religion of tolerance and peace, then you're more likely to adopt their causes. And we see this last couple of years with all these leftists joining the jihad against Israel and identifying with Hamas and so on. And so that's what that chapter is all about.
And then we've got Jewish Voices for Jihad. Oh, this is horrible, man.
Same thing, that you have these people, this noble group of people with this wonderful religion, and they've been mistreated by the terrible Westerners who are inferior in every way. And so, even the Jews who were called the worst enemies of the Muslims in the Quran itself, leftist Jews are identifying with the Muslims, with Islam, and with the jihad against Israel.
Yeah,
And
if
so, this is the failure and excuses business. This is the outcome of making the excuses for the Muslims. Then you begin to identify them. And, it's not their fault. Everything they've done is right. And so you might as well just join forces with them. And here we see it happening all the time now.
and yeah, if the Quranic revelation had not ceased with Muhammad and had he'd continued receiving revelations, then Surah 5 verse 82 would now say, "Verily, you will find most vehement in hostility towards the believers to be the polytheist and the Jews, although you will find many useful idiots among the Jews." Something along those lines.
Yes, absolutely.
And then we have fabricated Muslims. Who's fabricating Muslims?
The Muslims and non-Muslims are joining together. This is the other side of thinking that this is this wonderful, noble uh, culture that's been victimized by the West. That there are all the great heroes of the West were actually Muslims, and we don't know it. It's been covered up by the wicked non-believers. And so, an Iranian cleric, actually the grandson of the Iranian cleric, the Ayatollah Hossein Borujerdi, he claimed in 2012 that Albert Einstein had admitted Shia Islam was the most scientific and just religion in the world. Albert Einstein, David,
Well, that's
he
good
was a
news for the
Shiite.
that's good news for the new Ayatollah. They should have no problem taking over the world with their super advanced science.
Yeah, and you see how pathetic this is that
It's bad.
non-Muslims actually take this up. We'll get to some of them here. Let's see what we got after Einstein. Um, Leonardo da Vinci was a Muslim. These are Muslims saying these so far. Um,
I've heard Neil Armstrong. I've heard a bunch of these
yeah,
guys.
Neil Armstrong is here, and let's see. And then they're just totally fake stories like Jacques Cousteau became a Muslim. Of course, you hear the stories all about how Thomas Jefferson admired Islam, and that's because he had a Quran. He had a Quran because he's fighting a war against people who said we're doing this because of Islam. But they never say that. They act like he's some sort of proto Muslim. And Morgan Freeman is supposed to have converted to Islam. Um, this fictional person, John Ford, this was an internet meme. Allahu Akbar. John Ford, the richest man in the world, owns 190 American channels. He declared his conversion to Islam and cried while pronouncing the Shahada. There is no such person. Nobody's ever
Wait a minute. You're
found
saying
such a
there's
person.
no one named John Ford?
Yeah,
John
no,
Ford.
not the richest man in the
Okay.
world.
John Ford Musk.
Yep. And so then I go into in 16 a retrograde force,
That's
have
Churchill there.
some of the actual things that happen, not these fake converts, but real converts. And the retrograde force quote comes, of course, from Winston Churchill saying that how dreadful are the curses which Mohammedanism lays on its votaries, besides the fanatical frenzy which is as dangerous in a man as hydrophobia in a dog. There is this fearful fatalistic apathy, and so on and so on. And so then you get real converts to Islam, not the Neil Armstrong and Albert Einstein type. You get John Walker Lind, who, you were talking about that. We were talking earlier about how Muslim countries don't have problems with illegal immigration. Nobody's sneaking into Afghanistan. Nobody wants to be there. But John Walker Lind, the Marin County Mujahid, the kid who was he was a kid in California who converted to Islam and was later arrested. He was fighting alongside Al Qaeda and the Taliban against American troops. He actually he got his parents to agree he was going to go and live in Yemen so he could study uh, Arabic. And I think he must have been the only guy in the last century who has gone voluntarily to live in Yemen.
Yeah. Even if, God forbid, I were to convert to Islam, would not be going to Yemen for any reason ever.
And then he went from Yemen to Afghanistan. So
Oh my
the guy,
goodness.
he had all kinds of opportunity to see that he'd made a wrong choice, but he didn't put it together. Anyway, I got a lot of stories here of converts to Islam who become terrorists. And the reason why these stories are important and why I tell so many of them is because I want to emphasize the difference. There are converts to Christianity all over the place. And how many of them become terrorists? Can you think of any converts to Christianity who have ever committed an act of violence and said, I did this because I read my holy book? I cannot think of any such incident. And yet there is incident after incident of these Americans and others converting to Islam and joining terror groups. And there's the story I like to tell of Mohammed Reza Takari Azar. You remember him, David? He was in University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill in 2006. He was an Iranian. He was not an observant Muslim. He was a Muslim background, but he was a party boy. He was just getting drunk and such, college kid. And then he decided that he was wasting his life and that he was going to recover his religion. So he started to study the Quran, and he ultimately rented an SUV and tried to run over as many of the children on campus as he could because he read in the Quran that he had to wage jihad against unbelievers. And he wrote detailed letters to the campus paper quoting the Quran, saying he'd studied it, and these were all the verses where he was commanded to wage jihad. Now, there is just no comparable person to that in the Christian tradition. And that is a remarkable thing because there's so many converts to Islam who, or Muslims who are not devout and then become devout, who turn to violence. And yet nobody seems to put two and two together here.
Yeah. Weird.
You'd think they would.
Hmm. At least after the first 1,000 examples.
Indeed. And so that's basically it. I go at some length about the individual converts to make that point, and also just to show, as I said at the beginning, Islam is bad for societies and bad for individuals. It destroys societies, makes them parasitical, and ultimately kills them off. And it ruins the lives of individuals by making them think that to do evil is good.
And Kind of seems demonic to me, Robert. I have to say, seems
I don't have
demonic.
any doubt about that.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Teaches people to hate and destroy and grape and everything else, and then teaches you all that the more you do it, the better you are with God, and then you spend
Yep.
eternity doing all this stuff, and it's
Yep.
like rough stuff, rough stuff. And the sad part is, it convinces people who want to follow God that this is true, right? It says, "Oh, you
Yep.
really want to follow God? Here, be as sick and twisted as possible, and that'll help you spend eternity deflowering prepubescent girls."
Yeah.
Crazy stuff.
Creepy ones with see-through skin.
Yeah, so guys, the link to Robert's new book, and we just had a good outline of it, so you know what the topics are. That link is in the description. I also have a link to Robert's book, The History of Jihad, and the Quran, and his book, The Critical Quran, and to his website, Jihad Watch. Let's check out these last super chats and see if anyone's saying anything meaningful, if they're just saying dumb stuff and dumb zoot jokes. Let's see. Mo and Dazut says, I miss This Week in Jihad with Robert Spencer and Mike Winger. See that? Making a stupid joke. Mike Winger. Mike Winger.
You
The
do
worst,
look just like
the worst person in the world, and they keep talking about it.
it's you. It's that you look just like him. I'm sorry. It's like that guy, the Nazi guy, Richard Spencer, and people are always mixing me up with him because our names are similar.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like that. I have this similar name to that guy, and you look just like Mike. It's just the way it is.
He tries to copy me in order to deceive even more people. Let's see. Sending 100 pesos. Unfortunately, there is an Ahmadi mosque in the historic downtown here, and in a neighboring municipio, another mosque, probably Sunni. Any ideas how to stop them? Well, learn some material. Learn some arguments. Learn the Islamic dilemma. I'll tell you that right now. Learn the Islamic dilemma and start talking to them. Very easy to do. Lots of these places, they're going to assume you are completely ignorant about Islam, and they would love to talk to you. You could just be walking by and say, hi, what is this? And they would love to talk to you because they think you're stupid and that you're going to convert based on their nonsense. So that's a good way to start off conversations. Let's see. Good to see you, Robert. Hope you are doing well.
Thank you.
And we have here Alexius. Thank you. No comment, though. And Moen Dazut says Muslim men should get together and make a circle and zut, and maybe Allah might bless them. I mean, if Muhammad had said it, they'd be doing it thinking, yes, this is how Allah will bless us. Jews gave you the weekend. Muslims gave you airport security. I rest my case. Islam stifles all the best parts of humanity: innovation, individuality, humor, compassion, cooperation, joy, the things that make life good. Don't forget music.
That's right.
Awesome. This Week in Al Zut is back. No, we don't. That'd be a Muslim channel. How did Mr. Qureshi reach Muslims in Pakistan? Are you talking about Nabil? Talking about Nabil? How did he reach Muslims in Pakistan? Mainly by writing books and making videos, if that's what you're talking about. Let's see. Why do Muslims not want to be called Mohammedans? It describes them better, followers of Momo. Yes, it does. And that's why you can use the term, and if anyone objects, explains why you're using it, and ask if you're wrong about that. The first man to walk on the moon was a Muslim, Ahmed Armstrong, you see.
Yeah, well, it's in the book. He had to deal with that. He actually had to issue a statement at one point because Muslims would come up to him, and invite him to their mosque and things like that. And he had to deny the whole story because there was so much wishful thinking involved.
And, yep. And we all know he really did convert to Islam, but the Jews made him keep quiet about it. The Nerd Empire said, speaking of historical ignorance, when is your son releasing his videos, David? Yeah, I mentioned earlier, maybe you didn't see it, but I mentioned earlier we were supposed to record his first video today. He has a cold, so he's going to wait till his voice has returned. I told him to sleep as much as possible, and then we'll worry about it. David, can we have a Momo versus Momo stream? Who treated their Aisha? Can we have a Momo versus Momo? Oh, I think you mean Muhammad Hijab versus Muhammad, the fake prophet. Who treated their Aisha better, Pig Job or for the prophet. Yeah, police be upon them. Yep. Quran leads to relationship. Oh, the Quran, as far as relationships, master to servant. Old Testament relationship, covenant people. New Testament relationship, adopted family, children of God. Yeah, different views.
Yeah.
And by the way, all that stuff, all the theology affects the ethics and everything else. In Islam, the relationship that you have with Allah is a slave to master relationship, as opposed to like Christianity, where we're children of God. We're children of God. You don't automatically. A slave master doesn't automatically love his slave. He buys his slave and owns his slave. He might come to love his slave if it's a really good slave. And so you have Muslims trying to kind of earn Allah's love by doing more and more stuff. But sadly, the things Allah commands are really bad for the world. And so, yeah, you can see how that theology actually affects what people do.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Allah is a Zionist. That's all that matters.
Not really true. I have an article about this. You can find it online. Did Allah really promise the land of Israel to the Jews? It's based on a couple of passages in the Quran, but you can't just take those in isolation and say, you see, he gave Israel to the Jews, because there is the tafsir, there's the hadith, there's the whole tradition of how Islam has understood these things, these passages, and there you notice there's no Muslim Zionist movement, and that's not an accident. It's not because they're all misreading the Quran. The Quran doesn't teach that the land of Israel belongs to the Jews. It teaches that Allah gave the land of Israel to the Jews. The Jews disobeyed Allah and incurred his curse. And the true followers of Moses are the Muslims, and it's their land, because they're the true followers who are not under the curse. You got to look at the whole picture here. Unfortunately, that's the way it is.
We have So Good to See D. Wood and Robert Spencer together again. God bless. And Islamic Yearning Learning. Islam centers on servanthood, the New Testament on sonship. One emphasizes submission, the other adoption, shaping how believers relate to God and truth. Yep, that is indeed the case. Again, guys, have a link to Robert's new book, The Tragedy of Islam. It's in the description, as well as links to his books, The History of Jihad and The Critical Quran, and a link to Jihad Watch. Robert, any final thoughts before we close out?
Islam is not good for you. And so if you're a Muslim, you should consider that carefully. And instead of trying to think of some society where it worked, or some individual who's a great guy who's a Muslim, which is not denied here, there's no doubt. There are great people who are Muslims, but they are great in spite of Islam, not because of it. If they followed what Islam taught, they would not be great. They would be killers and rapists and everything else. So you should consider that for your own life. And you really want to come to success, leave Islam.
Absolutely. So, yep, Muslims, look around you. If Islam is true, is this the way things are supposed to be? Are you guys supposed to be completely incapable of making countries where anyone wants to live, unless you find yourself on an ocean of oil or something like this? Are you supposed to be going around the world whining for handouts and crying about being victims and crying about being persecuted, no matter how many terrorist attacks there are and so on? It's just absolutely pathetic. And then when you look around and nothing's going your way, oh, but the Jews are so strong. The Jews, we have to blame the Jews. It's just pathetic. It's absolutely pathetic. And everyone out there who feels bad for Islam and wants to, oh, we need to prop it up and help it. Why are you keeping this going? Why? It's pathetic. There's a reason it does nothing but fail. It's a screwed up, messed up system. So stop defending it and stop making excuses. And last one here, unrelated, but D. Wood, where did you get the Daniel and Lions artwork from? Well, I remember in prison I saw the painting and I liked it, so I looked it up from a place where you can get prints of artwork and stuff like that. So that's where I got it from. But yeah, you can find that if you want it. You can look that up. Anyway, yep. Again, links are in the description. Get the book. Read it, start sharing it. If you don't read entire books, still get it. Pick a chapter you're really interested in. Robert's discussed them, giving you an outline of everything that's in there. And pick a topic that you're interested in. Learn that topic well. If a 1,000 or 2,000 more people, right? Keep in mind, it's great if it's millions, but any topic that comes up on any of these shows, if a handful of people or 100 or 1,000 learn something new and start sharing it, guys, that multiplies. That multiplies. If those of you who are watching right now learn something, learn a particular topic, then you go out and start sharing it, guess what? That's a bunch of more people who are suddenly informed on the topics, guys. So these are good times. Everyone out there who's worried about Islam complaining, oh no, Islam's going to take over Europe, Islam's going to take over the world. We know what wrecks Islam, guys. We know it. It can't stand up to criticism. So why are you whining? Stop whining. Start learning. That's what Islam can't take. It can't take criticism. It can't take people learning how to deal with the Dawa script. It can't take people exposing its lies. It can't take it. It starts crumbling. So if you know for a fact what its weakness is, and you're worried about it, it's the whole plan's right in front of you, guys. The whole plan's right in front of you. All right, guys. So thanks, Robert, for joining. Check out Jihad Watch
David.
if you're not already following Jihad Watch. That's where you stay up to date on the jihad attacks around the world. And guys, keep in mind, not just Jihad Watch, the website. Also if you're on X, follow Robert on X. He posts the updates daily, and that is a very good place to see Robert when he posts the update, and then share it. To get that out to more people. So guys, there are people doing lots of the work for you. You got to do your part as well. And last one here. What I mean is Israel's successful in kicking butt in the Middle East. It must be Allah is not on the Muslim side, just trolling Dawa. Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, if I were a Muslim, I would have to wonder why is this little group constantly kick the crap out of us? If we have to whine and blame everything on this one little group when Allah is supposedly helping us, sounds like Allah's on a different side. That is something that should be concerning Muslim.
Allah promises success in this world, so why do they keep losing?
Big question. Maybe you guys want to answer. All right, everyone. Catch y'all next time.